Welcome, believers. Welcome, conspiracy theorists. Thanks for sticking around. Okay, so we are going to tell the story of the 1983, the Welsh UFO crash. Okay, they call it Europe's Roswell. Now, sometimes referred to as Europe's Roswell, an alleged crash in a small village near Aberystwyth in Wales in January 1983 is perhaps, it definitely is, right, not as well known as we might imagine. Okay, especially as it boosts apparent proof of an incident in recovered material claimed to be from the otherworldly craft, or the UFO as we'll call it, right? Furthermore, according to the main witness, a local farmer, a discreet and a professional clean-up operation took place on his land where the material was discovered. Right, so I'll tell you the story. I've got to tell you this story. It's part of the map, right? It's out there, right? And it is in Wales. But it's not a fantastic story, all right? And I'll tell you why, right? Despite the apparent seismic shift in public perception that such an event would result in, only one newspaper would cover the story. And even then, right, the coverage would dry up almost instantly. Was this a purposeful decision due to an outside influence, right? So basically, was the government shutting up the newspaper? Right, similar to other claims we have examined before. Right, we know how powerful the government is. We know they are willing to go to extraordinary lengths to cover such things up, right? So one newspaper, only one, and it disappeared really quickly, the story. Now, whatever the truth behind the incident, the recovered material remains in the possession in a secure location, and I'll tell you why later, of UFO researcher and investigator, a bloke called Gary Rowe. There he is, right? Now, might it one day prove to be a vital piece of evidence in getting to the bottom of the UFO and alien question? And I'm going to say no. No, you will never get to it, I don't think. I think they will go to such lengths to keep the UFO subject covered up that I wouldn't be surprised if they bump people off. They definitely threaten them. Right, so it's my opinion that in my lifetime there will never be disclosure. All right, unless something lands on the lawn right outside number 10 Downing Street, comes out and goes, "Hello, I'm an alien," and then people would still not believe it. Right now, and will the truth of what did happen in a small village in Wales that cold January in 1983 ever reach the public arena? No, it won't, right? Now, I get my story from UFO Insight. I found this online, but I like to go to UFO Insight and study what he says. So this is directly from that website. All right, now look, check it out. It's really interesting. It's a small, very, very small subscription. All right, and you can find whatever you want on there. It's fascinating. If it wasn't for UFO Insight, I wouldn't have started my map. All right, so, okay, as I was saying, I don't think it will. Is the alleged crash near Aberystwyth really Europe's Roswell? No, I don't think it is personally, right? I think a UFO did land there, probably, all right, but there are a lot better cases to call, should we say, Europe's Roswell. And that up there, the Berwyn incident, that's a fantastic incident, right? If you haven't seen it, follow my YouTube channel and check it out, the Berwyn incident. It's a fantastic story, right? It even involves, right, you know, the government saying it was meteorites, you know, it was a meteorite, right? There is rumours that bodies were taken, right, to Rudloe Manor or the Corsham Computer Centre, right? So the bodies were taken there. Anyway, I do digress, right? So, one cold morning, January 1983, farmer Mr. Evans discovers several large crumpled pieces of foil and metal on his land, very much like Roswell, right? Now, upon closer inspection, the material appeared to be the exterior of a small plane or helicopter, as you would imagine. That's the first thing you would assume, wouldn't it, right? Now, Evans would immediately contact the police, stating he suspected an aircraft had come down in one of his fields. Furthermore, he would reason to himself that the incident must have happened during the early hours, as the fields were clear of such debris the night before, right? And we know how hard farmers work, mate. They literally work their fingers to the bone, right? So he must have been in his field late evening and then checked it in the morning, right? So the Royal Air Force, the RAF, would send an investigation team to speak with Evans. Now, by this time, the farmer had made discoveries of metallic debris in a total of 4 of his fields. That something strange had taken place was obvious, right? Part of the debris had a bizarre green-grey colour to it, as well as a honeycombed appearance. So a green-grey colour does sound military to me, right? Interestingly, the unit would inform Evans that none of their military vehicles were missing. So it wasn't a military vehicle, right? Or a military plane or helicopter. And furthermore, the material, whatever it was, didn't appear to be from any aircraft that they were aware of. Now, they might not know of all aircraft, especially light aircraft, but at this point, they weren't aware of any sort of civvy aircraft or military aircraft that had gone missing. So that's important, isn't it, right? However, shortly after the initial Air Force response team, a second unit arrived, and this one was much more aggressively thorough. Now, what's more, they contained both uniformed and non-uniformed officers, some of which claimed to be from the Ministry of Defence, the MOD, Nick Pope's place, right? Ministry of Defence. Now, a cordon was erected immediately around the field containing the wreckage. Even temporary floodlights were set up so the team could work well into the night. Now, they would systematically remove every single piece of the wreckage, which would range from large pieces that required 2 people to lift to the tiniest fragments. Evans would later describe the incident as like something out of a James Bond movie. Look, I'm not saying it isn't a UFO. I will always assume that it is, because that's how my brain works. But even if it was a military aircraft, they would still systematically remove every single piece of wreckage, even if to try and find out why it crashed, right? Now, regardless of the size, the unit retrieved and confiscated every single piece. All that is, except for several small pieces which would come to light a little later, right? Now, several weeks later, the MOD would release an official statement regarding the incident. That they would claim once more that no military aircraft was missing, and that furthermore, there was no military radar evidence of any other aircraft in the region, anywhere near the night in question. Now, that is really important. Right, so the RAF, the MOD, whoever, right, has come out to say that there was no military radar evidence. So if it was a light aircraft and it had a desponder, it would have popped up on radar and they would have known it was in the area. So as far as we could state at the moment, it wasn't military or civvy, right? Now, they would state that the material they had analysed was unidentified. There was, however, little information of any kind of follow-up investigation or what might have happened to the recovered material, right? So basically, they've gone, they've picked it up, they've stashed it, they've took it away, and they've said no more about it, right? Perhaps suspiciously, only one newspaper, and we've said that, haven't we, would cover the incident, and it was only a one-off story, and that was in the 23rd of January's edition of the Express, and the story under the headline says "Strange Debris Out of the Sky," and that was it, right? Now, although the minimal coverage ended before it began, it was enough to bring the attention of the case to UFO researcher Gary Rowe that we mentioned earlier, right? He would speak to the small village and to Evans, right, and to Evans in the order to speak with the witnesses directly, right? So, with a small team of UFO investigators, they would search the fields hoping to find a piece of missed wreckage, so they might do their own analysis. And amazingly, their efforts were rewarded as they found some pieces apparently missed by the MOD unit. Now, with the wreckage secured, Rowe would go about having samples sent for testing. And this is where it gets a bit weird, right? Okay, it gets a little bit weird. All does it, all does it. So they too would fail to identify the material, right? So as I say, with the record secured, Rowe would go and have his samples tested. As we might expect, the results were a little more inclusive than the military findings. Okay, for instance, they too would fail to identify the material. However, they would claim it had very similar properties to a thing called duraluminin, I'll put the word up there, right? A lightweight but strong material used in aircrafts. Okay, right. Furthermore, the grey-green material was in fact a paint-like substance which remains unidentified. Right, so the green-grey material was a paint, but it was unidentified, right? Now, when Rowe looked to return to the farm and investigate further, however, even more suspicious activities were taking place. Evans would inform him that the area of trees he wished to investigate was off limits. It was now under the control of the Forestry Commission, right? So they've roped off an area. Perhaps even more bizarre, as Rowe would point out to the organisation themselves, why were they destroying trees and uprooting them when the whole reason for this company, well, for the organisation existence, was to do the exact opposite and preserve them? Now, weirdly, they would respond that storm damage had caused them to take charge of the area and declare it off limits. Even stranger, the soil itself was also replaced. All right, so they're saying, the Forestry Commission are saying that they're removing these trees because of storm damage. Well, it's not a bad excuse, but why remove the soil? It's a question, isn't it, right? Now, Rowe would press the person on the phone as to the highly unusual activities of the Forest Commission, and the response was perhaps more telling. Right, the voice informed him that it was indeed most unusual. However, this is what they had been told to say. So who told him to say it? Right, it didn't go that far, but he was obviously told to say what he saw, what he said. Now, shortly after this conversation, Rowe himself would receive a visit. Right, several mysterious men would visit Rowe following his discovery of materials in the woodlands area near Evans Farm. Now, they would insist that he hand over the recovered material to them immediately. However, right, Rowe would inform them that the material was with several different people at locations all around the country. Furthermore, and perhaps a testament to his expertise in UFO circles, Rowe would offer that the respective people also received specific instructions from me. Now, he said if anything was to happen to him, or indeed the wreckage, now safe and secure in a location, they were to immediately come forward with their piece of wreckage and information. Right, so basically, right, because of his expertise, Rowe would say that if anything happened to him, basically, if he was bumped off, or he was in a serious car accident and comatose, then they were to release the information. Wow. Would you say that was paranoia? Because I certainly wouldn't, right? With this, the men simply left and did not return. However, Rowe would claim that his post that gets delivered through his box by the postman, was obviously intercepted and searched through before arriving with him sometime before following the visit, right? So his post was being intercepted and searched. What were they looking for? What were they looking for? We should perhaps also mention that the area around Aberystwyth have extensive underground systems, right? These stretch under large portions of the area. Now, they were in use mainly in the Second World War as a storage system for items of value. Now, it certainly isn't beyond the realms of imagination to think that these since abandoned tunnel systems and vaults, at least part of them, are now in command of the military. And I'll tell you what, they are definitely in command of the military. Come on, right? So they've got underground tunnels and bases under Aberystwyth. Sorry. I do struggle with pronunciations, even simple stuff, so I do apologise. But Aberystwyth, right? Okay, or might the rumours of an alien base in the region have more truth? Right, I don't think so. I don't think it's an alien base. I think, if anything, it's definitely military, right? Now, while we mention that Wales, especially along the coastline, is considered a UFO hotspot, and like I said, it is, right? The Pembrokeshire area definitely is. We should also perhaps clarify that one of the most active towns is Aberystwyth. Of course, even with the wreckage, absolute proof of these claims so far remain elusive. There is no definite conclusive evidence. But they do say if you were going to go to court with the evidence of UFOs, you get banged up. The evidence for UFOs is so strong, even though if there was any proof, if there was a crashed UFO, if there was alien bodies, they would be hoovered up by the government and the military and hid. And anyone who made too much noise would probably disappear, right? What we should make of the claims of the 1983 UFO crash in the small and otherwise nondescript village in North Wales, right? As I say, I have mentioned before on several occasions, not least the Berwyn Mountain incident, how parts of the country appear to attract more than their fair share of UFO sightings and encounters. And they definitely do, right? As outlandish as this may sound for many, even for the UFO community, is there possibly knowledge of certain high-ranking military and shadow government officials being in operation somewhere off the Welsh coast? Right? Might this incident have connection to those rumours? There is also no solid proof where the remains of the wreckage are. It is the opinion of many researchers that they reside in a top secret military base. Of course they do. They were hoovered up, got rid of and hidden. Possibly somewhere near Cardigan, apparently. Others believe the wreckage to be in Aberystwyth itself. Possibly in the theoretical alien military bases in the area. No, they're not. I don't think they're alien. I think they are military. Now, whatever the truth of the matter, would it appear that something most definitely did come down in Evansfield, and most likely did so somewhere in the early hours of January morning 1983. Now, the pieces in Rowe's possession would certainly indicate that. Now, whether it was an object of extraterrestrial origin or a secretly military experiment is to perhaps up debate. Look, I don't think it's military. I mean, even if it was, they wouldn't tell you. Of course they wouldn't. But they have come out to say there was no radar evidence. But would they say that? Would they? They probably would. They would lie. They would lie through their teeth. So what do you think? Do you think it was a UFO that crashed and was quickly hoovered up by the government? Do you think it's a government thing and it was quickly hoovered up by the government? Do you think there's alien bases under Aberystwyth? Or do you think they're military? I'm going to go for military. All right. So, but that Gary Rowe seems to think it was a UFO. And to be honest, there it is. Aberystwyth, the UFO crash. I'm going to say it was a UFO as well. All right. Well, this was UFO, aliens and weird stuff. I'm chuffed a bit that you stuck around. All right. Thanks for watching till the end. Like, subscribe and ding that notification bell if you can. And I will see you on the next one. Thank you.